Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I will be talking about Trine 3, The Artifacts of Power. We actually have a title for this sequel. So Trine 3 mixes things up from the Trine formula quite a lot. I think the biggest difference between Trine 3 and its predecessors, we've entered the third dimension. It's not just a 2D platformer anymore, it's a 3D platformer. I would more say it's like a 2.5D, where kind of think of like Crash Bandicoot, where you're still going down hallways, but you can move around in the Z-axis. We have an overworld now. You can move your character all around this overworld, and the levels themselves get unlocked by collecting these pyramids throughout the levels. So instead of collecting experience and leveling up and unlocking new abilities, our characters just have all of the abilities straight off the bat. You're not leveling up, you're just collecting these pyramids. When you collect a certain amount of pyramids, it unlocks the levels. Now, I never came across not being able to progress story-wise because I didn't have enough pyramids. I just collected the pyramids as I went along. There were a couple that I missed. I didn't 100% complete this game, but I was able to access all of the levels that I possibly could. So I'm not sure what collecting all the pyramids does. They have these one-off little levels that you slowly unlock, and they just have like 25 potential pyramids, but you can only play as one character. So they're not story-related. They're more like challenges. So like if a side level is just for the wizard, it's more like a puzzle platformer. Sometimes you come across these combat side missions that you can only play as the Knight Pontius. But these are all just like little distractions compared to the main story. There's a lot more cutscenes in this one, and a lot more of an in-depth story, in my opinion, where I was just a little more invested in what's going on with our three characters, a little more invested into why we are doing what we're doing. So obviously, because we're in the third dimension, we have to change how the characters function. So I think the biggest difference would be Amadeus the Wizard. Now, in previous games, you had to draw using your right stick to create many boxes and many planks. In this one, Amadeus can only have one box at a time, and this is just mapped to a button, and I much prefer how this works compared to the first two. You just spawn a box wherever, and it just feels like you really have to play through the levels instead of trying to like cheese through how I would play with the first and second Trine. I would just try to make all these in-depth structures to bypass certain obstacles. In this one, you actually do have to play how the game developers intended for you to play. So he just spawns a box out of just one button press. You don't have to draw a box anymore to create it. And then he has a button to slam the box down into the ground. And this suddenly makes Amadeus so much more useful during combat, because you just automatically spawn a box and then you can slam the box down upon enemies. And it just is a lot more streamlined this way. I definitely prefer how Trine 3 made Amadeus. Pontius, he's the knight. He pretty much has all the similar controls that he used to in his previous games. He doesn't have his magnetic pull and push with his shield anymore, but you can still aim your shield in a direction to like ricochet bolts. He has his basic attack, he has his charge, but then he also has like a ground pound, similar to how Amadeus has his boxes. If you jump in the air and you press the B button, he'll like slam down in the ground, do this little ground pound. I think this was actually in Trine 2, if I'm not mistaken. Zoya, the thief, also has a pretty interesting mechanic now where her grappling hook, she can connect it to lots of different things, and then you can kind of adjust how long the length of the rope is, and you can use this to interact with the puzzle platformer. So you can use it to like pull objects to you, or you can also attach the rope to another object to hold two objects together. So it adds a little more depth to Zoya, and it kind of makes her more useful. You can, if you want to reset how the rope works, you can shoot it with a bow. So I think all three of the characters, I do like what they did with all three of them in this game. It was a little difficult learning how to manipulate my characters in the 3D space. I'm mostly thinking about the wizard Amadeus, because he can move his conjured box on the Z axis, but you have to hold the shoulder button to like manipulate where the box goes. And then for Zoya, it was hard to target where her grappling hook would go. It was just hard to wrap my mind around manipulating the 3D space with these characters, but it is possible, and you can master moving around in the 3D space. I do have to remember how each character controls because they're all so different, especially in the 3D world. But by the end of the game, after playing through all the side missions, I could remember how each character controls and functions. You can also wall jump. Each character has a wall jump now, which is really nifty. When a character dies, it doesn't just go straight to the checkpoint. Their ghosts kind of like floats to a platform, and you have to stand on their ghost for a set amount of time, and then they revive. It's just really generous with its deaths and its checkpoints. Even when you exit out of a level, you can just hop back into any section of the level that you want, and it will tell you how many pyramids you have in each section. So I think it makes 100% completing this game a lot easier. As far as optimization goes, this game is pretty rough, however. Just going into it, it looks a lot more pixelated than the first two games. I think they had to sacrifice quite a lot in order to make this game a 3D game, but the edges are just super rough. There's a lot of dips in frame rate as well. Sometimes it almost looks like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, whereas instead of a artistic choice to skip the frame rates, it is just done accidentally, and it doesn't feel good. Sometimes when there's a lot of enemies on the screen, this game just really chugs, and I'm not quite sure if it's just for the Switch port or if that's just how this game is. I suspect that's just how this game is. I've definitely encountered my fair share of glitches as well, where I'll be climbing up a wall or something like that, and my character will just fly off, like randomly, go in between walls. I'd cut through platforms. It's just a really buggy, glitchy mess, and it does affect my enjoyment of the game, which is a shame because as far as gameplay goes, I do prefer this 3D space, and I do prefer how the characters work, but it is just a poorly optimized game. Bugs aside though, I feel like some of the game is more thought out. Like there's different enemies. You actually have to think about it because there will be like spaces on the ground that enemies are casting a spell, and you actually have to think and move out of the way. It's not just button mashing with Pontius the Knight. You actually just have to think about the combat a little more, and that the enemies, there's little wizards that shoot those spells. There's the tiny enemies, there's the big enemies. You're not just fighting skeletons or goblins. Sometimes you'll encounter haunted books. Sometimes you'll fight these treant looking guys. I'm just a little more invested in the combat than I was the first two games. I'm not sure when this game came out, but there is the cake is alive reference, which I thought was pretty funny. For those of you who don't know, there's a popular game called Portal, and when it first came out, there was this whole scene about the cake being a lie. And it just became like an internet meme to the point where it was exhausting, and we are so sick of the cake is a lie. And this game actually, all three of the characters say the cake is a lie, and I just kind of rolled my eyes like, oh man, that reference feels a little outdated. The game length itself is, I think, a really good game length for this. A game such as this, it was only about 3 or 4 hours, which I actually liked. I feel bad for anyone who paid full price for this game though, because of how buggy of a mess it is and how short it is. And then story-wise, like I said, I was into the story. It had the cinematics. It told me what was going on. It was investing me in the story. And basically, we're trying to like piece the Trine back together because it was shattered. So I was at the end level, but I didn't know it. And we were halfway through collecting the Trine, and you fight this little boss. And they're like, all right, we're halfway through. Good job. And then it ends. And then there's a little message saying, thus concludes Trine 3, the Artifacts of Power. And I'm just like, what? Wait, it's done? It just didn't feel like a whole cohesive story. Like, I'm perfectly fine with the game length, but I want the story to conclude. So I guess we'll just pick up where we left off on the story in Trine 4. I'm not really sure. It just didn't feel like a whole complete game because the story didn't conclude. It just felt like a one-off kind of beat. I don't know. I'm just conflicted about Trine 3 because of how buggy of a mess it was. But I did like the 3D space, and I did like the combat more than the first two. I think I'm just going to give this game a 2 out of 5. At this point, I'm not really sure if Trine is a series for me, but I'm so close to finishing up, to catching up where Trine is with the fourth one. So maybe the Trine 4 will be the game that gets me into the series. But as far as right now, I'm just not sure if Trine's really my kind of series, my kind of game, which is a real shame because I really like the fantasy medieval setting here. And on the surface, it just seems like it would be right up my alley, but it's not. Like gameplay wise, I don't know. Trine, man. I'm just not sure where we're going here, but I am going to get to Trine 4, and it'll be the one that finally sells me on the series. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think about Trine 3 or Trine as a series. Maybe I'm missing something here. It's probably because I'm playing it single player. I bet it'd be a lot better with multiple friends, with 2 other friends playing through with me. That's it for me, though. I'll talk to you later. Bye!